All right, good morning, everybody. We're going to get started here in just a second. I want to make sure everybody has a chance to get in the room. Good morning. All right, well, I have 10:01, so I want to be respectful of everybody's time and start on time and end on time. My name is Julie Cornegay, and I'm with the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta, Birmingham branch, and I'm excited to bring to you today the dashboard for Alabamians to visualize income determination, or the DAVID training. So we'd like to thank you for joining us, and I'm excited about this presentation today because this has been a long time coming. This is a partnership between the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta and Alabama Works. And so you might see DAVID a lot here in Alabama. Cliff is actually the name of the software that we're using that was developed by the Atlanta Fed. So this partnership has, it's sort of a combination. So you might see DAVID and Cliff used interchangeably during this presentation, but just note that the DAVID name branding is for the Alabama specific tool. So before we get started, I just want to thank a few people because I know that we've been talking about this project for a long time, but really to see it to this point, we've had to have a lot of support from Governor Ivey's office. We've also had state leadership and multiple agencies across the state that have really supported us and helped us out. The leadership at Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta for supporting the build out of the software and the time commitment it's taken to deliver this. And then I also want to thank the pilot program through the career centers, and I'm not going to name everybody because I know I'll forget someone, but that was just a really invaluable information experience just to work with this fine group of people to fine tune the tools so that it can be as user-friendly as possible. The last person I want to thank is Jill Corbin with Alabama Works, who has been just an amazing help with pulling off these trainings and the technology piece of it. So just wanted to recognize her specifically. So I'm excited to get started today. And the first thing I want to mention is that this training has over 300 people registered for it. And so a lot of this information, some people are going to be hearing for the first time, and other information people will have heard before. So what I really want to do with this first introductory module is really level set and set some strong foundations so that as we start introducing the charts in the actual dashboard in the planner, that you guys are very, very comfortable with the content. So with that being said, we are going to get started. I wanted to identify the learning objectives for today's session. So what we plan on doing is introducing the concepts around benefits cliffs, reviewing core concepts that are found throughout the tool, identifying the charts that identify the benefits cliffs, and then explaining how career pathways works, as well as a couple of fun learning assessments to test for understanding. So we're excited about that, and just bear with us with the technology. I'm trying a couple of things for the first time, so keep your fingers crossed it work. All right, so let's move on to the next slide. And I just wanted to give you some explanation. A lot of times people say, why in the world is the Federal Reserve Bank in this space? And so we're really hoping with the development of this CLIP tool that we can provide individuals with the information that allows them to make a more informed choice about training and budgeting for benefits cliffs. We also want to assist educators, nonprofits, workforce development practitioners, employers to identify when and how support services and financial resources may be needed to move individual clients and employees along a path of skill acquisition. And then finally, there's an opportunity here to inform policymakers about incentives that can be offered throughout the state and local level that can really help smooth out some of these difficult transitions. And so we're excited about these opportunities. And just to give you guys a sense of who all is on this training program today, we have representatives from the career centers, from our state agencies, community colleges. We have, I believe we have some secondary educators, as well as nonprofits. So we're just a very wide-ranging training class today. And I'm really, really excited to see how some of the creative ways you guys find to use this tool as we roll it out. All right, so Cliff, or David, again, interchangeably, is based on financial planning software built for high-income families. And so our goal was to modify this technology to develop a tool that allows individuals to create a tailored career pathway. It allows users to explore occupations and education by different educational attainment, as well as how long it takes to complete that training process. That we can also look at how tax credits or public assistance benefits change over time as income increases. And we also want, a really nice thing about the planner tool that we're going to look at is it allows us to look at budgets for years when users experience benefits cliffs or a deficit, a loss of income or net resources. So with that, we want to get started and dive right in to the check-in question. So Jill, if you could post our check-in question for us on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being very comfortable and 5 very uncomfortable. I'm sorry, stop. Let me rephrase. On a scale with 1 being very uncomfortable and 5 is very comfortable, how comfortable are you reading line and segmented bar charts? And I put some comparisons up here so you could see. You'll see things like this in the dashboard. So what we want to do is spend enough time covering this information so that you're comfortable working with your audiences. So we'll take a second, and hopefully we'll get everybody to respond. I'd love to see 100% participation on this. So again, 1 is very uncomfortable reading charts and graphs. Maybe you've never seen anything like this before. Maybe it's been 20 years since you've seen something like this before. And then 5 is very comfortable. And I would say that's sort of I do this stuff every day, work with data visualization. This isn't new information for me. So we'll give a second for that. It looks like we've closed out our poll. Oh, good. So we have a pretty good cross section. We'll look at that. So if you are very comfortable, then bear with us. If you have, if this is the first time you've seen it, let me know if we're going too fast. Okay. All right. So before we dig into the charts, let's start with some terminology that you'll need when reviewing this next section. So the first thing we want to talk about is defining what we call net financial resources. And, this is just sort of it's sort of a fancy name for disposable income. And what we're looking at here is, so after-tax income is your net income or the take-home pay from the money you make working or your earned income. And so, I always think about, sort of your gross income at that, net, I apologize. So you have your gross and your net income. And so this is going to be your net income that you take home. And then we also add in the public assistance benefits. And so, that's going to be any of the programs that a family may qualify for. This includes tax credits. So things like the child tax credit or any type of earned income tax credit. In-kind benefits typically are included as well as cash received from the government. And then we subtract out family expenses like childcare, food, healthcare, housing, transportation, utilities, and other miscellaneous expenses in that category. And then finally, we have this, the family's net financial resources, or that disposable income. All right. So there's a few other definitions I want to touch on pretty quickly. We talk a lot about benefits cliffs, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard of this term before. If you haven't, it's essentially an income gain that leads to a loss of net financial resources that makes a worker worse off than they were before the income gain. So essentially, for every dollar they earn from wages, they're losing $1 or more in public assistance or benefits. And so that's something that we want to focus in on. And then the next term, and we'll go into all of these in more depth, is a benefit plateau. And this is an income gain that leads to a loss in net financial resources that makes a worker about as well off as they were before the income gain. So essentially, they're earning more money, but they're losing the benefits as quickly as they're earning it. So it's sort of a net, and they're just sort of plateaued. They're just sort of coasting at the same income level, even though they're earning more wages. And then the last term I wanted to introduce is the near minimum wage job. And we all know what that is, but I just wanted to qualify because you're going to see this a lot in the charts. And this is an entry-level position that pays at or close to the state's minimum wage. So in Alabama, we're using approximately $9 an hour as our benchmark for that. All right. So now, this is where the technology gets a little risky. We are going to try a quiz in Quizlet. And so what I want to do is I'm going to put into the chat a link. And here, hopefully everybody can click on that link and it will take you to a quiz. And we're going to assess the vocabulary that we just covered. And so here's an example of what it looks like on the screen. So what you do is, it's not a drop and drag activity. So I thought it was at first, but it's not. What you do is you click on the term. So like here, I would click on benefit cliff. And then the next thing you do is you click on the description of that term. And if it's correct, it'll disappear. And if you're incorrect, then it will show a flash red real fast and allow you to try again. So it's timed. So let's see how quickly everybody can get this done. You guys take about 2 minutes to work on this quiz, and let me know if you have any trouble. And I look forward to your thoughts about how this goes. All right, so this is mine's, got a message in the chat. Mine is showing up as flashcards. Okay, well, it's one of those technology fails, apparently. Apologize for that. We will correct that for the next training session. So you guys just got out of a quiz. You should feel pretty good about that. But we'll come back. I'll send you a link, and maybe we could do that as post-assessment. We're just gonna keep on going. So, all right. So now what we want to do is help you visualize the impact of benefits cliffs using a line chart. It's going to be the first thing we look at. So when you use a line chart to illustrate impact over time, so in this chart, we're going to look at the impact of the household annual net resources or disposable income as their annual employment income increases. Okay, so again, the line chart illustrates the impact over time. And this chart is looking at the impact of the household income or annual net resources as their annual employment income increases. So annual employment income is on the X or the horizontal axis. And so I've added a red arrow here, and this just to point this out. And so we see wages increase over time here. So we're anticipating that over your lifetime, you will see an increase. Hello? Okay. And then the next one, if you look at the annual net resources or the take-home pay, is on the Y or the vertical axis. So if you look at the arrow I just popped up there, you'll see at about $25,000 that you'll see this little dotted line here, right? So we're actually calculating, so from here you have the x-axis or the annual employment income. You'll see this dotted arrow, and we're plotting our data points here. So as you come over from this about 17,000 and representing their annual net resources, the two lines intersect and create a data point. And at that data point on the line chart, it represents the quantity or the number that matches that particular time in the x-axis. All right, hold on. All the animation has to catch up, sorry. All right, so the line segment continues, and we've got connects individual data points and gives us a picture of whether income is on an increase or a decrease. And we're determining what the trend looks like at this point. So in this example, we see a sharp decline in the family's annual net resources. So hopefully everybody sees that. At $25,000, their disposable income was essentially $17,000. And then when they made about, let's say, $27,000, their annual net income or their resources or take-home pay decreased to about $15,000. So their buying power or their money after all these things were taken out and adjusted, we saw a sharp decline. And so that's where the term benefit cliff comes from. It's when we connect these data points, the sharper the slope decline, it's the greater the magnitude of the decline. So we just definitely want to make sure that you guys can pick that out and understand that that's where the benefit cliff terminology comes from. All right, so at this point, I will stop and see if anybody has any questions before we move on. Okay, well, hearing none. And if you do have questions and you just don't want to ask them in front of the group, feel free to
have a question.
Oh, good.
I wanted to know, is this PowerPoint available for us? Like, is there a link or an email that you can send us?
Yes. So we what we're planning on doing is we're recording the session, and so that will be available shortly after the presentation. And then we will include the PowerPoint so that you can refer back to it during the training. And if you guys have any questions, you'll have my contact information, and I can certainly try to help you through anything that's not covered in our training today. Was that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
You're very welcome. All right. So I wanted to give you a bigger picture. And so this slide illustrates the impact of the benefits cliffs. And we're going to add in the scenario, a single mother with 2 children. So as her income increases, there's a sharp decline at certain points. And so you'll see these marked. And we've got one here, got one here, we've got one here. So we see the first cliff. It happens at the far left. And then you'll see that there's this line that's going through that sharp V. So this is our cliff indicator. Those are going to sort of mark for you so that it's easy to determine exactly where those cliffs are happening. And So it's going to point out the benefits cliff and where it's happening. And the cliff could be caused by a loss of public assistance. So like, let's assume here that she's lost adult Medicaid at this point. And then we see the next cliff occur on the right side of the screen. And this is more pronounced. And this is going to be the another V-shaped dip. This represents an like say public assistance loss of child Medicaid, pardon. And so this will be a second loss to her as her income is increased. And then the third chart drop that we see, we're going to look at that. It could potentially be childcare. And that's a pretty expensive or it's pretty big monthly expense. So that's sort of how this would work with these drops as income increases. And then in the center area here, we've got something marked as a benefit plateau. And so here, this again, what we mentioned earlier, this is where for every dollar that this person is earning, that they're losing a benefit for that dollar. So there's no real appreciable wage gain, or I should say, qualify that, not a wage gain, there's no appreciable increase in disposable income. All right. So let's move on to this next chart. And so this is what we call a stacked or segmented bar chart. And we use these types of charts when they want to compare several numeric values over time. And so in this case, we're looking at the different public assistance benefits that are in play by year and over different career paths. And so we're going to look at this. This is an actual chart that's in the Cliff dashboard. So, or the Dave dashboard, I should say, for this group. So we want to use the same example that we did earlier as a single mother with 2 children. And so let's say she is in a LPN program for 1 year. And we see that, let's see, I'll skip something. So the advantage of this chart is that you can look quickly over and see which benefits fluctuate over time. So looking at this, we've got our blue cliff indicator. Again, we showed that in the other screen with the V. Well, this is another, in the bar chart, this is how that cliff indicator is going to show up. And then we'll look at this little, as these benefits drop off, we'll look at that again here in a second. Okay. So now we want to take a closer look at how the bar chart is created. And so again, we have that x-axis across the bottom, and that indicates the time. And this time, instead of in dollars, it's in years, right? And then along the y-axis or vertical, we have the value of the public assistance benefits and tax credits that she receives in dollars. So we want to make sure that that you guys have that, because that's going to be very important as we move through this. So the first segment in this bar chart we're looking at is the gray bar, and this represents the earned income tax credit. So when you see these bars in the Cliff tool, I couldn't do this in the animation in the PowerPoint, but it's really cool. You just sort of hover over them, and they'll have a box that pops up, and it'll tell you more about like how much assistance, what the program is, and it's just and in what year. It's really helpful. That's one of the wonderful advancements we were able to make with the help of our pilot group in the career centers, that they just really needed more specific information about how to read these charts. And so again, we just want to thank them for their feedback. All right, the next benefit we're looking at is this segment is the child tax credit, or the CTC. So if you notice that earned income tax credit, or the gray bar, stops just short of the $5,000 mark, and it's actually that $4,219. The CTC bar picks back up, or the gray bar, where the earned income tax credit leaves off and continues to the $11,419 bar mark. So every time we add an additional bar it reflects the individual value of the benefit as well as the running total of the benefits so far. So there's two different things going on here. You see the program, the individual program and the value of that program, and then the overall, all of the programs that that she's qualifying for within this year or this 1 year time frame. All right, the next one that we're adding in is the National School Lunch Program at $775. The Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, at $6,652. Her Head Start program at $11,682. Housing at $6,286. We've got the Child Health Insurance Program that is the $3,992. So the total of all of the public assistance programs and tax credits for this family that qualifies for is pretty much right about a little over that $40,000 mark per year is what they're receiving in these benefits. And then, so notice the corresponding benefits are with the colors over here to the right in the key. And then we've also created, and we'll include this in the handouts, what I call it, I don't know, a cheat sheet or just a glossary of all of these benefits, tax credits, a little background information about who administers these. This fits in nicely if you've been part of the talent development capstone course that's been running recently. We've had a lot of these different organizations talking about some of this stuff. So I like this idea of just having sort of maybe a desk glossary or a tool that you can use while you're working in this tool. So I can stop there again if anybody has any questions about how to read the stacked bar chart. Okay, good. I just wanted to walk through it because it's a little intimidating on the front end, but once you sort of see how all of these values work together, it's hopefully it's a little easier to understand. And again, if you have questions, you don't want to ask them out to the entire group, just direct message me, and then I can at the end when we have our Q&A session, that we'll have a follow-up. I can really go back and look and see what's been accumulated in my personal chat, and then I can look at those. All right, so we were coming back to we've had this up a second ago, and as employment income increases, so we're looking left to right on that horizontal axis, the benefits phase out and they'll disappear completely at income eligibility thresholds. And so this can result in a large drop in the family's disposable income. So in this slide, we see an example of this. So there are substantial decreases in benefits in 2022. But let's look at what's going on in 2021. All right, so this is because while she's in school full-time, she's only working part-time. So remember we said that she was a full-time student in the LPN program, and she was only working part-time. Well, because she has 2 children and a very low income, she's going to qualify for a lot of these public assistance and programs and tax credits. So that's why we see such a high level in this year 2021, or the first year. But as she goes to work in 2022 in her new position as an LPN, she's making substantially more money than she was in that near minimum wage job. And so we see that sharp decline in actual loss of some of those benefits. So, and that's indicated by, again, that blue cliff indicator. So let's look and see what happened. And everybody has their own way of doing this. My preference is that I typically read these charts from top to bottom and then from left to right. And it allows me to make sure that I don't miss any of those programs that might be what I would call it hard to see or small. I mean, I don't know about y'all, but as I get older, things get smaller and smaller, so, and fuzzier. But so this little national school lunch program is really tiny, and so you want to make sure that you don't miss it. So that's again why I go from top down and then from left to right to read. All right, so we see, looking at this first one, the orange. This is she retains her CHIP benefit. Again, CHIP, orange at the top. The next one we see is housing. Housing is this pinkish color. Oh, and by the way, I should mention that when they reworked all of these charts, they made sure that they were within the standards for people to read with a colorblind issue. So they should be the colors that are appropriate and that are easy to read. So again, housing voucher is in pink, and we see here she has it, and here it's missing. So we should flag this, right? We're flagging this, that housing is she's probably gonna lose her housing benefit as soon as she graduates. All right, the next thing we want to look at is Head Start. All right, now Head Start is a program that our children qualified for. And so let's look at this, and she's going to need to plan on that not being in play for that 2022. And then what happens? Let's see, we've got orange and keep CHIP, housing voucher, we're going to miss that. Head Start, that is going to lose that. CCDF comes into play because she's now looking for work, and that's one of those tax credits that you have to be looking for work to receive. So that will come into play in 2022. The SNAP benefit, again, I'm making sure I didn't miss anything. Yeah, we need to flag that for her because that's probably going to go away the very first year she starts working. And then the National School Lunch Program, she will hold on to. The CDCTC, she will qualify for when she goes back to work, because she will need to cover her child and dependent care tax credit. Her CTC, child tax credit, she will be able to keep, and the earned income tax credit she'll be able to keep. And so, for me, I am not a practitioner, and I have not worked with clients that are experiencing this type of, dynamic change in their financial situation. But I feel like just to have this sort of heads up as to what they can anticipate as they transition from, a training program into the workforce would be very valuable, because at this point, that's when you can really step in and talk about asset mapping. What are the resources locally that we can do to mitigate some of this? And we'll look at some of those opportunities in a little bit. I think I just got ahead of myself, but all right. So now we're going to look at, and you might remember this, I asked you this a few minutes ago, about how comfortable are you with reading these charts. And so now we're going to pull it all together. And we've looked at the stackable bar charts, we've looked at the line charts. And so, just to review, our line chart in this right-hand corner now has 3 lines in it. And I don't want anybody to panic. Oh, it's the same concept we had just earlier. But now we're going to look at them one at a time. And so we look at the annual family take-home pay and self-sufficiency chart. And the red line here, it's kind of a reddish brown, represents a near minimum wage job. Again, that's at approximately $9 an hour job. And this is what we're trying to do better than, right? And so the key takeaway here is that the color lines, sorry, that's not right. And then the yellow line here represents the LPN program that she is entering. And we're projecting here forecasting what her income looks like. And so we see that between the reddish brown and like this mustardy yellow color, there's a substantial increase in income, right? I mean, absolutely, it's a good deal. You should do that. This self-sufficiency target line is what, we talk about self-sufficiency a lot in this industry. And this is the point where, you have to earn more than the gray self-sufficiency target to become self-sufficient. And that's where we want people to be. And so if you look, it corresponds, the gray line corresponds with the bar chart right here. It pretty much just shadows it. So let's talk about that for a second. So the gray dashed line starts at about 45,000 and then declines over time. So what is going on with that? Well, we're looking at this point, and again, we're reading the stacked bar chart. We have childcare expenses. If she's in school full-time and working part-time, she's going to have more childcare expenses. We've got food that's included in the self-sufficiency in the category. To categorize what it takes to get to self-sufficiency, there are specific expenses that we have to be prepared for. So we've got childcare, food, healthcare, housing, I can't see that, transportation, and then our other is going to be things like clothing, and then and this purple is utilities. Everybody has those utility expenses. And so and those are the expenses that represent one adult and 2 children. Another really cool thing about this is that this tool uses actual state-specific data. And so we categorize these expenses by county. So these are, I think I pulled Jefferson County for this example. I live in Jefferson County. And then they also are specific to our cost or expenses in this county. So we've adjusted the childcare, the food, because we know that the cost of living can vary across the state. So like if you're in Madison County, I hear housing is through the roof. So you might have a higher allocation of expenses for housing than, say, here in Birmingham. Just to make sure that you're aware that these expenses reflect what the actual expenses are. Now, that being said, these expenses won't reflect every family dynamic. We know that there are multi-generational households. There are people, say grandparents raising kids. So we are looking at what it would take for a single parent to be in a family household with the 2 children. Now, if you wanted to get more specific about the family scenario, that you would use the David Planner, and that's going to be something that we look at in Module 3. So this is just the overview in Module 1. All right, I think I covered everything on this slide. Let's see, we've got our key. And so we'll dig deeper into things like self-sufficiency. Dr. Reeder will do that next module. He'll teach you how to actually go into the dashboard and select the family scenarios. But my goal today was to make sure that you were more comfortable reading these charts and graphs. And so I'm going to, let's see, go back. And if Jill, if you will pop up our check-in question again, I've got 3 things I want you to just to take a quick pulse check here. Let me know, again, same question we had earlier. On a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being very uncomfortable and 5 being very comfortable, how do you feel now about reading the charts? Is it better, more comfortable? Was this the second question is, was this helpful? If I need to just skip over this next time and not spend so much time on it, then I can adjust the training for that. But I just want to make sure that the pace was it too slow, too fast, or just right? And then the other thing I'd really like to figure out from you guys is there additional information that you think would be helpful to include in this chart section? And that's just about reading the charts and graphs. Is there anything that you're still confused about or that you'd like covered in more detail? And you can put that information in the chat because the polling function in Zoom won't allow us to collect free response questions or free responses. But if you want to just direct message me with your thoughts, or if you don't mind sharing them with the larger group, then that's certainly fine as well. But let me give you guys a minute to pull those thoughts together, and then I will move on to the next. Good. Well, Jill closed out the poll and looks like everything came up substantially higher. That's good news. All right, so, and y'all can keep typing in the chat if you want to, if things come to you, but I see that I need to move on because time is getting away from me. So now we're going to take a look, excuse me, at benefits cliffs and career advancement. And so some of you guys, if you've heard this presentation, many of you have, you're familiar with our case study about Leah. And I just really like it because I think it does a really nice job of capturing an in-demand job in the state of Alabama and a pathway and, you know, these skills that are in high demand. So I just really, you know, maybe I'll come up with something new later on, but I'm going to stick with Leah for right now. But so she's decided to become a certified nursing assistant. And her question, you know, what she's talking with her advisor or her counselor, depending on, you know, what environment you're in, if you're in a community college or a career center, is should I pursue CNA, or should I look at the LPN pathway, or maybe even stay in school for an additional year and look to become a registered nurse? And so just to give you a sense of what a typical career pathway looks like, and a lot of y'all know this, it's a refresher, but again, we're just setting the foundation here, that it's typically pretty much looks like this. So the near minimum wage job would be median annual salary, or, you know, when we talk about median, we say that wages are, you know, half of the workers are earning more than that, and half of the workers are earning less. So it's not really an average because that would impact it, but it's the median wage. So for the near minimum wage at $9 an hour, we're looking at about $18,700. So going into the CNA occupation, she's clearly making more money, right? The $24,270. And then the LPN will bring her even higher to the $42,500. And then staying in school for that additional year will bring her up to about $61,220. So, you know, that to me is a clear incentive to go back to school and to learn new skills. And then this is just a different way of looking at it. And you hear a lot in this industry about on-ramps and off-ramps, and this is sort of what I was going for with this. Is, you know, you could start off as a home health aide or a personal care aide, and then, you know, go back to school and earn that credential for a CNA, certified nursing assistant. And then, you know, maybe that wasn't your dream job. You wanted to do something a little different. So you go into a community college program or a program, and you go into that LPN occupation. And then again, you could go back to school and with a registered nurse position. And these are all what we would call stackable credentials. Well, there's also a little different way of looking at this. And, you know, we're thinking about transferable skills at this point. And so you have these CNA, the certified nursing assistant she might say, you know what, I don't know what I think about this. This probably isn't a good fit for me. So she could go into medication aid, EKG tech, phlebotomist, dialysis tech as different credentials. Oh, sorry. And then move on to non-nursing or healthcare occupations if she wants to go into, say, medical billing. Insurance is a whole different industry. We think of these as like the health science cluster or the insurance or finance and insurance cluster. So you could really move into different industries with this type of skill set. And so just having those different opportunities increases employability as well. All right, so let's go back to the Leah case study for a second. And I want to talk just briefly about the barriers to career advancement. And we mentioned that Leah is a mother of two. She earns a near minimum wage salary, and she's receiving public assistance and tax credits. So for most individuals, the idea of going back to school or pursuing additional training is a pretty clear path to advancement. I mean, we've seen that in a couple of different slides here. So again, when we're reading our line chart, we see that the near minimum wage job is in the reddish colored line, and it's relatively flat, right? So let's say that job is a cashier or something, some occupation that isn't going to see substantial increases over time. So that's what we call it's flat. It's a flat increase. The yellow line is projecting her income after finishing her LPN. So again, we see this lower data point because she's only working part-time. But then when she graduates, she goes to work. We see she comes out her first year with this next data point. And then we're just reinforcing this, that she has a sharp slope up. So she's going to receive a lot more income. And then over time, we see that trajectory increase. So that's a nice income trajectory. But so what does this actually really look like for Leah with the two children, and then thinking about the fluctuation or the thresholds for some of these benefits? And remember, we had our cliff indicators, and we see with these blue lines that these are points where she is losing some of her public assistance. And so we see here, remember this brownish line, that's the minimum wage, near minimum wage job. And this orange or yellow line, this is her LPN. What is happening here in 2023? She is about as well off as an LPN as she was in the near minimum wage job. And when we talk about barriers to career advancement, this is what we're talking about. It's the point where, you've gone through the training, you've done what you're supposed to do, and you still can't get ahead. And so, this, we talk to people about this, it's just really very frustrating for people trying to advance in their careers. So, again, we're calling these the barriers to advancement. And so we want to just focus a little bit on these barriers. And many times individuals, we've heard from businesses and others that they'll actually decline work or, an increase in hours or enrolling in training because the benefits clause reduce the financial incentives to earn more through a credential attainment. Financial gains to career advancement don't pay off as expected. I mean, again, if you imagine that you're going to be better off after going to school and you're just sort of in the same spot, you can become frustrated, disbelief, and a sense of being persecuted for getting a raise. People can become dissatisfied with their choice because they don't obtain the expected benefits, or because their interests and circumstances changes. Their standard of living doesn't increase. I think just generally overall, they just become discouraged. And so we want, I think it's an opportunity from a counseling standpoint to show them the bigger picture. And so I wanted to show you this next slide. So again, we talked about Leah, and this was the LPN position. This was the near minimum wage job. This was the forecasted income getting out of school as an LPN. And then remember, this was a self-sufficiency target. And it would take her to reach self-sufficiency. It would take her until, you follow this line down, 2029 to reach self-sufficiency. And maybe even 2030, to be honest with you, because she's got to break it. So yeah, let's say 2030 before she reaches that. And I have a feeling if we sort of look behind that, go back to that bar chart that reflects what's under the hood, so to speak, of this gray line, that's going to be her childcare costs. Until her children are in school full time, she's probably going to still require some type of public assistance or tax credit to meet that self-sufficiency target. But what if we advise her and talk with her about the RN position, that one extra year of school. And so we look here, we've added that year. So she's in school, she pops back up in that end of the second year, and then she's making more money. She actually reaches that self-sufficiency target much quicker than she would have if she would have just stayed in the LPN role. So, I have that. I'm running out of time here, and I probably going to just summarize this and then pause for some questions. But we at the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta feel like this is a really valuable tool for people in your industry to talk with students, to talk with displaced workers, to talk with people that are looking to improve their financial situations, even parents that are looking to help their children make good decisions. This is a valuable tool that's out there, and we really want to see you guys take advantage of it. So, again, I'm just going to wrap this up and then open up the floor for some questions. But, today, just to wrap us up, we've defined benefit cliffs as the income gain that leads to a loss in net financial resources or their disposable income, and making the worker worse off than they were before they received the income gain. So they're sort of taking steps backwards as they're trying to take steps forward. We introduced the core concepts related to reading the lines and bar charts and associated that were associated with the Cliff dashboard. And then we discussed the career pathways as an organized approach to career planning for anyone wanting to land a first job or improve skills for different or better opportunities. So with that, I'll open up the floor for questions. Oh, so I see we already have one, and it's just because it's all right in my line of vision. And if there's others, maybe Jill can help me with moderating the chat. But is the data available for other states? So that's a great question. We do have tools for other states, and I noticed in the registration that we had some folks from Louisiana and Georgia on today, and we do have a tool for those states. So if you will reach out to me individually, then I'm happy to follow up with you and point you in the right direction. But right now, this training, we opened it up for, pretty much all of Alabama. We've been talking about it. We've been teasing it. We've been promoting the tool. And finally, we just wanted to rip the Band-Aid off and let everybody who wanted access to it roll it out. So let's see. Okay, so there's a question about the acronyms in the chart. And then I didn't see TANF. So, TANF is interesting because in Alabama, our thresholds are so low that if you're working a near minimum wage job, you probably don't qualify. So, I think TANF is in there for Alabama. It's not necessarily in there for other states. And so I can work with you individually. And when we open up the tool, you'll see for Alabama specific, it is in TANF is in there. So is the data region specific within Alabama? Yes, all of the data is specific to the state of Alabama. It's a great question. So what we've done is we use data sets. University of Washington has something called the self-sufficiency standard. And so what we did is it's a by-county research project that they did that looks at the cost of living, things like childcare, healthcare, food, transportation costs, and housing. And so we integrated all of that into the dashboard. We also use specific data for the thresholds for our public assistance programs. So all of those are adjusted, and then when there are changes, they're made pretty quickly. So everybody that registered will be included in the database. And when we have updates to our benefits database or our benefits calculators, then we'll send out an update that says, good news, Alabama's made their update to XYZ. And so that will be your notification that you can be comfortable and know that, say, the child tax care credit has been updated, or any of these really moving pieces that we have going around. Is there a plan to include SSD? Yes, SSD. Yes, and I think we talked about that. We do have a plan to include it, but that is a very complicated data set to get your arms around, and we're still working on it. But it's coming. I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, so I don't want to put a timeline on it. But those are things that we can talk about and work through, because I know that's really important to your group, for sure. Is the cost of attending school incorporated, or is it assumed? And I didn't get to see the rest of it. So good news, it can be. So the David Planner, again, we have the two different tools right now. We have the David Dashboard, which is what I gave you a very general peek into today, and that Dr. Reuter will be demonstrating next week and training you on. That is a dashboard. It's just a wide range of information. The David Planner is sort of like a TurboTax tool. And so if you have someone, after they've used the dashboard, they can say, I know what I want to do. I feel like I want to invest that extra year. I want to stay in school 2 years. I want to go into the RN position because I know I can do it. I've got the aptitude, I've got the will, and I'm committed. So you say, all right, well, then now let's go with the David Planner. The David Planner, it's a lot. If you've ever used TurboTax, and I'm not endorsing anything, but like a software for tax software, you literally go in and key in all of your personal financial information. Whether, what's your income, what's your cost of school, what type of, do you have an ITA, do you have some type of Pell, do you have parents contributing, or some type of grant that you've received, your scholarship? All of that can be included. Do you have additional expenses? Do you have uniforms? Is this an apprenticeship? Will you receive some type of income? All of that can be customized in the planner. And then that will allow you to project a 5-year budget. It will forecast any shortcomings from a budgeting standpoint. So let's say, in the first 3 months, 4 months, you might need an additional $250, $300 a month to meet your budget. Well, then we can work with that. That's when you go to your asset mapping tools and figure out, what resources available locally. You might need to go to your financial aid office and say, all right, I did the David Planner, and they say I need X amount of dollars for each semester to meet my budget shortfall. And it even allows you to budget in there an emergency fund, which I thought was a great idea, because when I've taught, I used to teach personal finance at UAB for what I used to call my 13th graders. But they didn't realize that wear items on a car were an emergency. It's like, no, you should really be planning for those types of things. Like tires happen. You need tires for your car. You have to have it serviced, stuff like that. So I just appreciate the fact that they raise that awareness, and you can integrate some type of financial education. And then you can also use your financial aid calculators with the tool as well. So, and we would welcome any feedback on these tools. And I would also open up, and I'm willing to go over if you guys are, but I want to be respectful of others' time. But, if you guys are really excited about this tool and would be willing to commit to, piloting, whether it's from a community college standpoint, a nonprofit standpoint, we really want your feedback. It's important to us to know how you're using the tool, how your audiences are receiving it. If we need to make any adjustments or pivot. I was really excited talking with a group, and they were excited about all of the different ways. I mean, I didn't know all the different ways you could use this in their specific line of work. So, we really value, again, I'm sounding redundant now, but we really appreciate, your time, your feedback. We hope that you found this valuable, and tell all your friends. We're going to leave registration open, and we're recording this in case they need to catch up. And then we'll have the next training next week. Same thing, we'll record it. If you have a conflict, you can just, catch up on your own. I would encourage everybody to log in using their own laptop so they can follow along. He'll have exercises that he'll want you to demonstrate competencies on, because what we have to make sure of is that we don't have misinformation out there. So we want to make sure that you guys are reading and interpreting everything so that you can give your audience the best information possible. And then after the 3 modules, we'll have an assessment. And so the people that pass the assessment will receive a micro-credential for the training. We may even have some people that are going through training for a second time. There's nothing wrong with that. We've made a lot of changes, and we've integrated some new training for the charts. So we encourage you guys as much as you can to become comfortable with the content. So, all right, well, I see some chats going on, and I think some folks are dropping off. But again, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see a little bit more of this. And then I think I am no longer sharing. And does anybody want to unmic and ask any questions? Or I can flip through the chat really fast and see if I'm missing it. All right. Yeah, so I definitely need to fix that game. All right. Well, I will give y'all a second to unmic or unmute if you want. And we will certainly circulate my email address so you guys can reach out. All right. Well, if I have nothing else, then I want to thank everybody for their time today. I appreciate it. And you guys have a great rest of your day.